going to talk about the book in just a moment, but first we want to talk taxes and all these new ideas that are coming out of Washington. David, if you'll give us a moment on that. Let's talk through some of these numbers first. The idea of the tax rate on companies not going as high as Biden has wanted. This is the new list that's coming out, and who knows what actually gets passed. But if they're looking for 26.5% instead of the 28 that he'd been looking for originally, and then taking that burden and putting it on the wealthiest Americans, is that a good plan in your estimation?
Well, remember, this is just a proposal by the House Ways and Means Committee chair. The numbers haven't been verified by the Congressional Budget Office yet as to what they will raise. Secondly, we haven't really heard from the Senate. So tax bills usually are passed about a day or two before they are really revealed. We won't really know what's in the tax bill until Congress has to have the tax bill in front of it. I suspect that will be at the end of the year. So there's going to be a lot of skirmishing and kabuki dance for quite some time. We just don't know what's going to happen. But in the end, remember, they're trying to raise $3.5 trillion. The Senate hasn't agreed to $3.5 trillion. Suppose the Senate says we only want to have spending of $3 trillion or $2.5 trillion, then you don't need this much revenue. So right now, we just don't really know what's going on. It's a very good time to be a tax lobbyist because there's plenty of lobbying to be done. But as to what's going to be in the final bill, nobody really knows, including the chairman of either the House Committee or the Senate Finance Committee.
Yeah, I suspect we won't know what's actually in the bill until after it's passed and there's time to actually read through all of it and figure out what the implications are on all of these things. And you're right, it's a good time to be a lobbyist in any of these scenarios. But there does seem to be a bent among progressive Democrats especially to punish the wealthier people, or at least make them pay what they consider as their fair share. So would it surprise you to have something, again, maybe not the details that we're talking about right now, but to have some of the burden that was expected to go to corporations instead fall on wealthier Americans?
Well, nothing would really surprise me. As Will Rogers famously said, the country's never safe as long as Congress is in session. So you never know exactly what's going to happen. But the most important thing I think people should remember is that we don't have an agreement between the House and Senate on how much money is to be raised, let alone where the money is going to come from, and let alone how these numbers coincide with what the president's willing to support. So it's going to be a wait before we really know what's going on. Clearly, we need to raise more revenue, I believe, to pay for the government we now have. I think the Republicans generally believe that they're going to control Congress next time after the midterms. Whether that's right or not, they believe that. So I don't think the Republicans want to propose any tax increases when they're in control. So I suspect while they won't vote for any tax increases, the Democrats will barely pass a tax increase, and they will get blamed for it, so-called blame for it, by the Republicans. And the Republicans in the next Congress won't have to have any tax increases because they can blame the Democrats for having pushed the tax increases this Congress.
You do think something will get done before the end of the year, though?
The only thing that is certain, in my view, as Benjamin Franklin said, is death and taxes. And there is no doubt that we're going to have a tax increase. No doubt at all. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but there will be no doubt that before Congress leaves this year, there will be a tax increase of some amount.
You think that it will be retroactive? I mean, that's the other issue that's kind of hanging out there. Some of these changes that are being discussed, if they're done retroactively, could mean some pretty big tax bills for corporations or people at the end of the year.
As a general rule of thumb, when you announce a tax proposal, you say it's retroactive the day you announce it, but it rarely happens that way. So I would be surprised if anything is really retroactive, because in the end, you're just playing with numbers about how much money you can raise, and you can raise a little bit more money by increasing rates prospectively. So I doubt that there'll be retroactive tax increases. That would be my view.